Okay, so you met a lot of different kind of people. Maybe some of those people you wouldn't normally find at university.
No.
The numbers of adults, although they've fallen very rapidly in the last 2 years as fees have changed, maybe higher in a college.
Yeah.
The number of part-time students may be higher in a college. Maybe that contributed to a useful mix
Yeah.
in terms of
Right,
your
that
experience.
way,
And from a policy point of view, one of the things that governments around the world are trying to do with higher education outside universities is to create more diversity, more different people in college, in higher education wouldn't normally go to university because it's not perhaps been expected in their communities amongst the kind of people they've worked with, particularly amongst adults. So that's one important aspect of it. And yet, the experience should be the same in terms of the level to which you are educated, the difficulty of the assessed work you've got to do, the quality mechanisms that are used to check all that. All those things should be exactly the same as they are in universities. And do you find any difference in terms of your attainment level and that of, say, some of the guys on the PGCE who've been at university? Who do business, you know, perhaps some people doing business? Are they more clued up than you, Tracey? Are they more accomplished?
I don't think it was particularly the like foundation degree or the honours degree. I think it was more like, because I didn't do any level business, I went straight on to the foundation degree in business. So I think it was what came before. So if you've done BTEC business, you've got that vocational understanding, and obviously at A levels you've got like some groundwork of it. But like the foundation degree did set me up with like a basis of the fundamentals of what go into business. So I don't really feel like my degree is any less than anybody else's. If that makes sense.
Okay. Good, because of course there's a view amongst a lot of people that different degrees from different places have different value.
Yeah.
And part of what education and higher education do is to help classify and rank people in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
That's one of the disadvantages for students at colleges, if you
Yeah.
like, that in some way their qualifications are seen of lesser value. That's why for me, working in partnership with universities has been quite important for colleges.
I think there is that perception, to be honest, because when I was doing my foundation degree, a lot, there were like 3, went on to do their top up at a university because they were like, oh well, at least I can get my BA at university. But then a few of them dropped out and came back, so I did it the following year. So I don't really, obviously it depends on circumstances and things like that, but I don't really think it's any different to it. I worked hard for it.
Sorry?
I worked hard for it.
Yes, you did. And there's, of course, all those quality mechanisms exist to ensure that the way you're assessed is comparable with everybody else. So the external examining system,
Yeah.
having the work checked and the exam boards checked, and all those mechanisms are there when colleges work in partnerships with universities in particular to try and ensure the quality is as high. Now, we've talked about just a little landscape where people are in colleges and they're more local and they're kind of different from the universities. We've talked about the quality mechanisms that are used to regulate higher education, which are the same as universities. So that actually raises a certain tension for people who want to teach higher education in colleges. What do you think those issues might be?
We had a little discussion about it last week in vocational teaching, just saying how it'd be very difficult to be like an FE teacher and a HE teacher with like time constraints. There's different working hours, that kind of thing. You're expected to work, like there's quite a few evenings with HE, isn't there? There can be with FE as well. So I'd say that's like the biggest difference. Like issues, I don't really know what I mean. I think
Okay. We talked a bit in this module about dual professionalism. And for most teachers in FE colleges,
Yeah.
that tends to revolve around the job that they used to do before they came to be teachers.
Yeah.
Are they plumbers who teach? Or are they teachers who can plumb? Are they hairdressers who teach? Are they teachers who can do hair? Yeah. There's a tension between the kind of skills and habits that people acquire in the workplace and what they do as teachers, where there are very different requirements of them and they have to behave in very different ways. Here's another aspect of dual professional. Maybe we want a multiple professionalism here, Tracey. What do you think? Because on the one hand, you're a teacher in a further education college, which means that you are judged by what your teaching is like. What are people judged by in universities?
The content of what your students are giving back, that kind of thing.
That's an important part of it, yes. But in many ways, for people who work in universities, the success of their careers and their personal achievement is based less on their teaching, more on their research activity, on the papers that they publish, the new concepts that they discover, their contribution to knowledge in general. That's important for their personal position in universities. And I think it's also got a relevance to the way that they teach. In colleges, we're learning to teach according to the Ofsted grading criteria that are developed for schools, and certainly in this college, and probably in colleges where other people on the course work. Then there are quality systems that are based on the Common Inspection Framework, and all those things about differentiation, about having a progression of varied activities that meet the needs of quite diverse learners. All those things are really central to what we do. Now, do they have a role in higher education in colleges or not?
I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that it'd be a criteria of you teaching HE, as I don't think there's a bigger emphasis on saying you have to have done this research product or contributed this much to business in HE. But I suppose it's obviously like anything, it's a benefit, isn't it? I think, don't the majority, I'm not speaking like I know it, but do the majority of people start in FE and then move up to HE when they're teaching in colleges? Do many people come from universities and go into an FE college to teach HE?
I would say that most teachers of higher education in colleges are people who have worked in colleges at other levels. So a lot of people who are teaching in universities, for that matter, are people who started on teaching in colleges as well. But what I'm driving at is, from the point of view of what constitutes being a good professional in universities, can sometimes be different. You have different quality systems, you have different views of the value of teaching and scholarship, and then on the other hand you've got those FE norms. Now, I think some of those FE practices of teaching are quite important. The things that you learn on this course about how to deal with diverse groups of learners who've got different needs and how you support those people. On the one hand, that's really important, isn't it? Because we've already established, from your experience, that students in colleges can be much more varied and much more really on the margins of higher education. People who stay in colleges because they're less confident about going off to live in a city and compete with people from other areas. They tend to be students who need the kind of support that you've learned about on your teacher training program that you're doing at the university now, I think. So I think that's really important. But on the other hand, the question then arises of, what is the content of what you're teaching? Isn't that important? And shouldn't that be based on a higher level of subject knowledge, for example, then you'd be expected to have, if you teach them BTEC Nationals or A-levels plan.
Yeah, the more generic, aren't they? Whereas I suppose HE can be related to the strengths of whoever's teaching, I suppose. If they've done a business paper and that, they know more about it to be able to teach it. Is that what you mean?
I'd say we're teaching at a more advanced level,
Yeah.
and so we need to have a more in-depth understanding
Yeah.
of those concepts, which, if you were a university teacher, you would be expected to acquire through your research
Yeah.
training as a normal thing. And of course that's not the norm in colleges. Now I don't think that's necessarily the end of the world, because at the end of the day none of us teaches out of our own research. You know, the most knowledgeable cutting-edge university teacher will not just talk about their own researches, they'll want to broaden those out and link those to the rest of that field. But it does enable them to teach from a greater depth of knowledge, perhaps, than some teachers in further education colleges. There's a kind of tension in those areas. In universities, there's maybe more emphasis now on teaching skills, and things like the Higher Education Academy that's there to develop teaching skills in universities. But those things are at a fairly early level, so there are a few difficulties there, aren't there? And a few possible tensions.
I don't know.
Okay. So
where are you thinking? Where would they be?
So I'm thinking about, do further education teachers always feel they have the knowledge and the confidence to teach at higher levels? I try to persuade a lot of people to do some work. You know, I should say I run a few programs across different parts of the curriculum: higher level business, higher level computing. I sometimes find it quite difficult to get people to teach at higher levels because they don't have the confidence in their own, in their own knowledge, and whether that's going to be enough to help them at that level.
Yeah, I can understand that.
The other side of that, of course, is, do they feel that if they get involved in higher education, they're stepping out of the core activity of the colleges, and it's not necessarily the best thing for their careers? Are they better off focusing on level 3 programs and on the big?
Again, I think it depends on the individual, but I think offering HE courses in the college, it's incorporated quite well, so it involves a lot of FE things, the teaching styles, that kind of thing. It's all incorporated into it anyway. It's not, I think that's one of the major differences between that and uni. Like, whereas you're being lectured, obviously not all unis are the same. At PGC, that's quite a small group, so we can have like discussions and that kind of thing. But I think that's one of the major differences with teaching. You incorporate that. If people are coming from an FE background, I think they try and incorporate that if they're able to do that.
Okay, thanks for that. Let's just take a break.